right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. As always, I'm your host, Adam Smith, with Just the Tips Coaching. And I've got a really unique guest for you guys today. We usually have a lot of top producing real estate agents, mortgage originators, financial planners, people that do good work in an arena where you guys all operate or some similar parallel type of arena. And it's usually just some kind of things on technique and tactic and best practices and those kinds of things. And then we obviously always get into conversations about authenticity and transparency and consistency and constancy, those kinds of things. But our guest today kind of he really does do a lot of what we do when it comes to sales psychology and sales mindset and those kinds of things. So without further ado, and you guys listen to me ramble plenty enough, so let's let someone else take that control for a while. Welcome to the show, Christian Hansen. Christian, how the hell are you, man?
Doing great. Thank you so much. And what an honor to be with you here on, how I met your mortgage. And what a great name, by the way.
Oh, thanks. We were just looking for something kitschy, and that came along. And we've got some wonderful people that have had influence on that over the years. We're actually in our 9th year of doing this weekly podcast.
Wow.
So we have done a lot of these episodes. It's been a good run. It's been a lot of fun. But enough about me and enough about How I Met Your Mortgage. Let's talk about Christian. And there are a couple of things that I absolutely want to get into. I want to talk about the books. I want to talk about your current operation. I want to talk about how you are really helping people to kind of bridge a gap between really good at one of their jobs, whether it's mortgages or real estate or whatever the case may be, and then getting better at the other job, the sales side of it, the, lead gen, the client retention, the capture of, loyal and faithful clientele.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really a big deal. And for those of you that are watching live, and I'll put this in the comments while we're chatting, you can go check out thechristianhansen.com. And I'll post that here in a second. And yeah, Christian, take it away. Tell us about Christian.
Absolutely. I'm really interested in two key questions. And everything that I do is centered around answering and helping people better answer these questions. And the first question is this: how long does it take? Let me break that down. How long does it take for you to influence someone to see you as the obvious choice? How many conversations? How many days? How many weeks does it take? Or how many months even, depending? Now, what if you could influence somebody to see you and to choose you over everybody else in one conversation? Now, we've all had conversations with people where we walked away and said, wow, that person was without a doubt, the best person I've ever talked to about that subject. And I don't need to talk to anybody else because they were so good. Well, how did that conversation take place, right? What did that person do? And that's what I study, and I help people learn. How do you influence people to choose you over others? And which brings me to the second question, and it's this: what is the story that you want people to tell about you when you're not in the room? Because I think the most important and powerful, and I think most important conversation in sales, and especially in business, is the conversation that happens between someone you have just served and someone you could potentially serve. I remember.
I don't think our audience is going to quite get their heads around how valuable that is when, and do bear in mind that what we do here a lot at JTT is focus on helping people build a strict repeat and referral business comprised primarily of repeat clients and client referrals.
Yes.
So this is huge. Keep going.
A few months ago, my folks were in town. I live in Salt Lake. My folks live in Los Angeles, and they were up skiing. And in the very dismal winter we've had here thus far. But I remember my mom was, talking with one of my cousins, and she said, "Oh, do you know that so-and-so lives here?" And my cousin's like, "No, who's that?" And my mom said, "Oh, well, he did this kind of business, and then he did this kind of thing, and now he does this kind of a business. Now, my mom is not a marketer. My mom is not a business person, but she was able to tell the complete story about this person's business and what they do with such convincing clarity.
And what they had done, what their past was.
Exactly.
He knew the background.
And to me, that said, okay, hang on. This guy couldn't pay for that kind of advertising, right? But it told me that he was so clear on his value proposition and on his story. Then he told it with such clarity and also with such frequency that it enabled my mom to tell it on his behalf.
Wow.
And so, which brings us, okay, so here you've just served somebody. If they walk out the door, what is it you want them to pass on to someone else? So those are the two questions. At the very beginning of the process, how long does it take for you to influence someone to choose you and to see you as the obvious choice? And on the back end of the experience, what is the story that people tell about you when they walk out of the room after you've just served them? That's what I help people answer. And how do we create the experiences that and create the connections that allow people to walk out and go, that person was hands down, without a doubt, the obvious choice, and I have no need to talk to anyone else. That's what I help people do.
That's ridiculously valuable. And don't get me wrong, I love the opportunity that presents itself with every one of those interactions by having somebody talk about you when you're not in the room and what that looks like for future potential connections, clients, customers, business. But to have the authority to ensure that when you do walk out of the room, that person is so ultimately convinced that you're the one. I mean, these are just two ridiculously valuable pieces. Now, this is obviously going to focus a lot on sales psychology.
Yes.
On conversation, on what kinds of things are we saying, what kinds of things are we inferring, what's the subtext.
Absolutely.
Those sorts of things. And I'm assuming that if I rushed out and picked up a copy of Influence Mindset, I'd learn some of these things. And there's a second, I don't know that I want to call it a book, although I love the spiral binding desk accessory that came in your second book. Give us a little bit of insight as to what's contained within those pages of both.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to take a step back and say, well, how did we get here? and you know what is the journey that I have been through personally that was able to help uncover some of these things? Well,
that's fair. And just because I know it, I shouldn't assume that the audience does. Good point.
It's totally fine. It's funny because I got my start in higher education admissions. And so I was reading thousands and thousands of applications.
BYU, right?
BYU, yeah. And I remember sitting there going like, okay, hang on, wait a second. I have a front row seat at learning what makes people stand out. And I got to see how it impacted me. And then I got to see how the same messages that students had in their essays impacted decision-making committees. And so I got to see, okay, what's the difference between how I perceive somebody, but then how other professionals perceive them? And over time, I started to notice patterns and habits and techniques that master communicators were using that influenced us to choose them regardless of their grades or test scores. And as my career progressed, and then later running MBA programs, I later ran international internship programs in South Korea and China. And also I worked in ultra high net worth financial services in Southern California. And in all these different areas, from undergraduate admissions, graduate admissions, corporate HR, and even the high touch world of ultra high net worth financial services and trust administration, these same principles kept coming up again and again. And it boiled down to this: people don't choose you. Instead, they choose their perception of you. And the words and behaviors that we engage in are providing people the materials that their brain is using to build that perception. Now, if we take a step back and understand that our brains are wired to pay attention to certain things over others, then if we learn how to subtly shift our language and behaviors in ways that speaks to ways that our brains are predisposed to pay attention to, we are automatically going to stand out and compared to everybody else. And the first step to that is understanding that your brain is trying to get in your own way.
Hmm.
What do I mean by that? Your brain is wired to pay attention that helps you pay attention to things that help you survive, right? It's going to pay attention to things that helps you increase your chances of survival. Well, the problem is that if my brain's wired to pay attention to those things, that means your brain is too. And yet, do I let my brain's needs get in the way of serving you? So let me put it,
Absolutely, we all do.
we all do, right?
Human
So
nature.
how can I hear your need to be served if all I do is serve my need to be heard? Right. And so, how do we develop the practice of noticing when our brain is throwing a temper tantrum and wants us to be the ones in charge and us to feel great, and yet we're getting in the way of the brain needs of the person sitting right in front of us? And the ability to notice when my brain is getting in the way, my brain is about to throw a tantrum, my brain is feeling insecure, and to be able to switch that off and instead reinvest my energy towards the person in front of me, that's what I call the influence mindset. And so that's the whole part of first understanding your brain is wired to completely make you trip over yourself. And so therefore, how do we speak to what the other person's brain needs are? And that's what I teach and train people how to do.
Wow. Okay. Well, don't get me wrong, but from my perspective, and while I am logically able to agree with all of this, yes, we absolutely get in our own way. We have survival instincts, to put it in a real general term that way, mental survival instincts. Um, from a tactical perspective, how can I start disrupting that?
That's a really great point. So let me maybe give an example from the
Yeah.
world of real estate. Okay. One of the core principles, again, in my book, The Influence Mindset for Sales Acceleration, I talk about the 7 EQ brain hacks that you can use that intentionally recenters your brain on focusing on the needs of the other person. And one of them, it's really simple. How do I speak? How do I acknowledge the emotions of the person in front of me right now? Okay, that's a simple question. So a few years ago, my wife and I had to sell our house in Southern California. We were moving up to Utah. It was a big move. And we had a number of people recommend several real estate agents, and we boiled it down to 2. And we scheduled a day where they were both going to come and take a look at our house. And then we were going to decide, okay, who do we choose? Well, the first agent came in, and he was eminently qualified. He was extremely good at what he did. He walked in and he said, "Oh, is this condo this many square feet?" We're like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I've done this many times. I've sold a lot of different condos from this same area. This is going to be really easy for me. Can I just take a look at the property?" And we're like, "Sure." So he walked through. He says, "Oh, this room is nice. That looks good. Yep, okay. This will be easy. Not a problem. Here's how much you can expect to receive. Here's how much I think we should list it as, and here's how long I think it's going to take. So when you're ready to go, let me know, and we're gonna go ahead and move on. And it'd be really easy. I've done loads of properties like this before." And with that, he was gone. Now, was he qualified? Certainly. Was he competent? Absolutely. Could he have done a very good job with our property? No doubt. But how was the second agent going to stand out compared to this one? Again, she had no idea that we just met with this first agent. Well, the second agent arrived, and before she said anything, she said, "Hey, before I take a look at the house, can we just sit down? Because I'd love to learn more about what the reason is why you guys are moving, because this is a big move, and I can tell that, you guys are really thinking hard about this." And so we sat down and we shared our story, and she immediately just said things like, "You guys, this is the right move. This is the right time. This is going to open up so many doors for you. And you have done the right thing. This is the absolute right decision. It's going to make such a big difference." And with that, we then looked at the property. "Oh, this room looks great. Oh, people are going to love this finishing you've added. Oh, I love the paint that you've put on here. That's going to really make it sparkle. That's a really attractive thing." And again, she went with every feature. She then attached an emotional benefit to it. And at the end, she listed the exact same numbers as the other guy. "Oh, here's how I think we should approach this. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's how much I think you're going to probably walk away. But again, I know you guys have really worked hard at this, and this is going to be such a big opportunity, and I can't wait to be able to help you make this big transition. As she walked out the door, my wife and I looked at each other, and the question on our minds was, who do we choose? Who was better? Here's the deal.
I'll bet I could guess.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the deal. Competence plus connection equals influence. The problem is that competence without connection is just noise. And the first gentleman, he was fully competent, but he didn't take the time to also create connection. He did not take the time to speak to us emotionally. He spoke to what his brain was wired to pay attention to. He spoke logically in ways that made him feel fantastic. Nothing's wrong with that. But in the face of someone who spoke with competence and created connection, he did not stand out. And we went with the second choice because she did both. So that's just one example of how do we balance. Yes, we have to speak logically. We need to show that we're competent, but we need to also balance that out with connection at the same time. And the way we do that is, how can I acknowledge the emotions of the person in front of me right now?
So this, and I remember who the colleague was, and he had posted something on social media about how there's an eminent flaw in the mortgage space when somebody is referred to us and we say, okay, great, go online and fill out this application. And my firm does do that. We have an online application, then people fill it out. That's the first step really in getting the process rolling. But there is a lot of pre-process type of work to be done. And he had made this very, very clear. And obviously the colleagues I know, like, and trust immensely all had chimed in on, yes, absolutely. It was, if you're having a 5-minute conversation with somebody and then just steering them into your online electronic, let's get into the process, nuts and bolts, very sterile kind of thing, then you're failing. And not only are you failing in the sense that, what would it take? Half an hour to really get to know somebody and figure out, wants and needs and what they're trying to accomplish and where the synonymities are, what kinds of things you have in common. Do your minds work alike? Are you into the same kind of things? On and on. Do you have connection? And of course, there's a lot of subtextual work going on in that. Are you going to be a huge pain in the ass? Are you going to drive my team crazy? These kinds of things. And everybody that chimed in this, I know, is really good at what they do, said, yeah, absolutely. Not only are you missing that connection, which is obviously a big piece of this puzzle, but you're setting yourself up for all kinds of headache and potential failure because you're not getting the whole story. Yeah. You're not figuring out what speed bumps are going to occur that you need to get over.
Sure.
What crazy turns are going to come in this process that you have to navigate.
Yeah.
So you're basically lighting the seat of your own pants on fire from the get-go by not making the effort to have the connection, even when you are really competent. Even when 6 people said, hey, you have got to use Bob to sell your home. If Bob comes in with 100 level competency, but 0 level connection, Bob is doing a great disservice to them and himself. He's not getting himself prepared for what issues are going to arise over the next 30, 45, 60 days, whatever that time frame happens to be. And he's literally cheating himself as well. And I think that was kind of the message, was that connection piece is twofold. It's really giving you an opportunity to be that influence, to maintain that driver's seat role, but that you're failing yourself because you're not getting the whole story. And there are going to be pieces that come up in that story down the road that you now have to fix on the fly, and you could have known about them from day one.
And that is entirely true. And that's also missing another key component, because you're speaking in terms of how is it just going to make the transaction go easier. But consider this. how much more additional connection time does it take to convert someone from being merely a one and done transaction to a referral source for the rest of their life?
Right.
Right. And that's one of the other
Are they
key.
going to use you again and refer more people to you?
Yes. And now, one of the things that we often make, and especially folks in very technically based industries, mortgage brokers, especially,
Mm.
and real estate, and also financial advisors.
Financial planning, insurance. Yeah.
Yeah, you are speaking your language, and that your bread and butter comes from knowing the ins and outs of the technical world in which you inhabit. But the thing is, one of my someone I really look up to, you probably heard him, Brian Buffini, right? He said, if you solve a service need, you've created a transaction, but if you solve an emotional need, you've created an advocate. And something that I really like about that. And so, one of the strategies that I like to help people who are in this situation to do it, to again reframe how they're thinking, is to ask this question: how can I help this person feel like the hero of their story? Now, notice how I've said again these two questions. First is, how can I acknowledge the emotions of the person in front of me? And now I'm asking the second question: how can I help this person feel like a hero in their own story? Because when we ask questions, that is a way for our executive brain to take control over our insecure survival brain. And it's a way that helps intentionally reshift our thoughts. So, for example, we all want to be the hero of our own story. And when I'm there and I'm, laying out all the technically laden terms of, this thing in this form and everything, that makes me feel really good. It makes me feel really competent. But to the person who I'm sitting in front of, they may be really overwhelmed and confused because they are there for an emotional thing. We need to understand that the problem they have is only a problem because they have a deep feeling of emotions behind it. Okay. And so, how can I help this person feel like the hero? If I walk in and I'm the hero of the situation, I'm now making them feel like the other archetypes in storytelling, which is either the victim or the villain, right? If I'm the hero. But what if I were to embody the persona and the archetype of a guide, where my job is to help you become the hero of your own story? So instead of saying things like, oh, I've done this before, we got to do this form and this form and this form, and this is not a problem. Again, I've done this many, many times. What if we, again, put our own insecurities aside and we said something like, after doing it for this many years, here's why I think you have a great shot at this. Or here's why I think you can really trust your instincts. Or you just brought up a really great point. And I think that's really quite impressive that you noticed that, because not many people do. And that just tells me the amount of due diligence and hard work you've put into this process. And it's all indication of my perspective that you're going to be very successful in this. Do you notice how each of those phrases is intentionally making it so the person in front of me feels more encouraged to take the next steps in their hero's journey? And my job is to be the guide that helps them get there. So again, that's another framework mental shift that I help people make. And these quotes and examples, actually, I literally just got from my books called The Unforgettable Phrases That Get People to Choose You, where I break down these mindset shifts: emotion instead of logic, guide instead of hero. And there's a third one for speaking in insight instead of just in knowledge. And then what are phrases that you can use in these different ways of thinking that can help you day by day build connection in a way that makes people see you as the obvious choice.
This is fantastic stuff. Show us the books again. I know we don't have a whole lot of viewership.
Yeah,
but I do want to put them up there.
Phrase book, I literally just came out with this a couple weeks ago. The Unforgettable Phrases That Get People to Choose You. And if you go to literally just type in getthephrasebook.com, it'll send you directly to my site. And then to learn more of, again, these skills and additional strategies, that's more of my book, The Influence Mindset for Sales Acceleration, where I dig into the 7 EQ brain hacks that get people to choose you. And I've mentioned just 2 of them today. How can I acknowledge the person's emotions in front of me? Or how can I acknowledge the emotions of the person in front of me right now? And number 2, how can I help this person feel like the hero of their story? Again, there's several other questions that in these moments just helps reset my brain. So I'm focusing entirely on serving the person in front of me in the way that they want and need and have hoped to have been served.
Christian, this is fantastic stuff. In fact, I've got a bit of a pickle here that we're not going to get enough information out of you over a 30-minute podcast. We're going to have to get you back on the show. I assume that these are both available at thechristianhansen.com as well.
Yes. So you can find the Sales Acceleration book on Amazon, Audible, and as well as Kindle. However, because Amazon doesn't really print hardback with spiral bound books for
that would be tough.
It's tough. But one of the neat features that, again, as I've been doing coaching programs across the country with companies, they would, get these phrases and they'd say, wow, this is so helpful, but I'm not able to recall them as quickly as I want. Well, what I've done with this is that I've designed it so that it can become it becomes a desk reference. And I have 25 weeks worth of phrases that you can simply place on your desk. And you simply just, work on 3 phrases a week, and each are aligned with the 3 frameworks we've talked about: logic versus emotion, knowledge versus insight, and hero versus guide. And if you simply just, again, build this muscle memory of thinking in this new way, it's going to help you ultimately become unforgettable.
Unbelievable. And just to make some personal connection and give a little bit of insight to Christian, other than being in Utah. Sorry about the Mammoth game.
We take our losses.
They have a chance. I hope they bounce back. In any case, you're also a pianist, if memory serves.
Yes, I am a musician. Yeah.
Okay.
And
tell us more about that.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. It all started when my parents sat me down and they said, well, Christian, we all going to be musicians in our family. So what instrument do you want to play? And I said, well, I want to play the trumpet. And my dad looked at my mom, dear, do we have any trumpets? And she said, no, honey, we don't, but we have a piano. And then my dad said, well, any other instruments you want to play? And I said, well, I want to play the drums. Well, dear, do we have any drums? No, honey, but we have a piano. And so he's like, well, it looks like you're going to play piano.
Perfect.
And I took piano lessons, and I quit once I got into high school, but I learned that I enjoyed writing music and composing. And that's just a fun way of being able to add value. And so when I do keynote speaking, I use my piano as a way of teaching influence, because, here we have these composers who, some of them have tunes that have lasted hundreds and hundreds of years.
Sure.
And how did they do that? How did they create music in a way that is unforgettable? And what can we as sales professionals, what can we as leaders and executives who run organizations, how can we take these lessons from the greatest minds of music and use it in our everyday meetings with others to also become unforgettable? And that's how I incorporate music as I serve audiences.
Wow. So certainly a proponent of music programs.
Very much so.
And I did the same, took piano lessons as a kid. In fact, I still have the piano sitting here in the next room that I took those lessons on. My mother, a heavy influence in that arena. And then she gave me guitar lessons when I was a little older. And actually the guitars are sitting here in my home office, as well as a mandolin. I really want to learn how to play. A very difficult instrument, but
it's a very different sound and very unique too.
Yeah, no question. But yeah, definitely cool stuff. Well, Christian, thank you. I'm so glad. And a shout out to Angel Tussey for connecting us. And Angel, if you happen to see or hear this video cast or podcast with Christian and I, thank you so much for making the connection. And I'll get Christian back on the show for another episode down the road as well. And yeah, I know carving out this kind of time on a Monday morning is no easy feat. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. And if people just go to getthephrasebook.com, literally, I don't think you need a www. Just type in Get the Phrasebook. It brings you right to my site. And then my team can ship out a copy to you as soon as we can. So yeah, I'd love, I'm making it free. Just pay for shipping. so that people can begin using this immediately and starting getting instant value with changing their language so they can become unforgettable.
I love it. Well, thank you, Christian. Again, this has been a fantastic episode for us. Just in the usual blah, blah, blah closing type of stuff. If you guys want to catch this episode, it'll be available on Amazon, Apple, and Spotify on Wednesday. You can certainly see or listen to previous episodes. You can get copies of my books. Although, boy, I don't know that I'm quite the literary figure that Christian is, but it is what it is. And all of the other things, our weekly blog, the Little Tip, or our annual event, the Mile High Mastermind, all these things available at justthetipscoaching.com. Christian, don't run off. I'm going to run our extra, but would love a few more minutes of your time. And
Absolutely.
for the rest of you watching or listening live or in syndication, thanks for tuning in. You can catch live episodes on Monday mornings at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And the podcast is fresh on Wednesdays on Amazon, Apple, and Spotify. And for the rest of you, we will see you next time.